The first scream shattered the morning silence. Noah flinched, nearly dropping his phone as the piercing cry echoed through the school hallway. He turned to Emily, his best friend, who sat beside him in the nearly empty classroom. What the hell was that? Emily's face was pale, her hands clenched around her notebook. I don't know. Mr. Grayson, their history teacher, frowned and pushed his glasses up his nose. Stay here, he said, striding toward the door. But before he could reach it, another scream followed, this one closer. Then came the unmistakable sound of chaos, desks scraping, footsteps pounding, and a guttural, wet growl that sent a chill down Noah's spine. Then the screaming turned to gurgling. Noah stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. The classroom door had a small window, and when he peeked through it, his stomach clenched. Blood smeared the walls of the hallway, and students were running in all directions. But some weren't students anymore. A girl, he recognized her as Kelly from their chemistry class, stood in the hallway, her once pretty face twisted into something monstrous. Her mouth was open unnaturally wide, her lips peeled back to reveal blood-stained teeth. A boy lay beneath her, twitching as she tore into his throat. Oh my God, Emily gasped, backing away. Mr. Grayson cursed under his breath and yanked the classroom door shut, locking it. Nobody move, he whispered harshly. Noah's mind raced. This had to be some kind of prank, right? A messed up senior prank? But the smell of copper in the air, the screams that were growing fainter, the sound of something, someone, chewing just outside the door, it was all too real. What's happening? Emily whispered. Mr. Grayson didn't answer. He slowly backed away from the door, his eyes locked on the window. We need to get out of here, he finally said. Quietly. Another crash made them all jump. The hallway had erupted into chaos. More students were being attacked, and the infected ones, if that's what they were, moved fast, lunging at anything that made noise. Then, a loud bang rattled the door. The class froze. Kelly, the thing that used to be Kelly, had slammed into the glass, her bloodshot eyes darting wildly. Her fingers, tipped with broken nails, clawed at the window. Noah grabbed Emily's hand, his heart hammering. We can't just sit here. Mr. Grayson nodded. The emergency exit. If we move fast, we can make it to the gym, maybe even out to the parking lot. Noah wasn't sure the parking lot would be any safer, but anywhere was better than here. The classroom had another door leading to the hallway on the opposite side of the school. Mr. Grayson slowly unlocked it and peeked outside. The hallway was empty, at least for now. Go, he whispered. The group moved quickly, their footsteps muffled against the tiled floor. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every distant scream made Noah's pulse spike. They passed an open locker, its contents spilled out, a backpack, a math book, a single bloodied shoe. Then they reached the gym doors. Mr. Grayson pushed them open, and they stepped inside. But the moment they did, Noah knew they had made a mistake. The gym was full of them. Dozens of infected students, their clothes soaked in blood, moved erratically across the gym floor. Some hunched over lifeless bodies, their jaws working methodically. Others twitched as if their bodies hadn't quite figured out they were dead. Noah inhaled sharply. One of them turned. Then another. The noise of the doors opening had drawn their attention. A low, guttural groan filled the air. Then came the worst part, they started running. Go! Mr. Grayson shouted. Emily grabbed Noah's wrist, yanking him back. The gym doors slammed shut behind them, but the infected were fast, too fast. The group sprinted down the hall, their lungs burning. Noah could hear the pounding footsteps behind them, the shrieks growing closer. Then he saw it. A janitor's closet. Here! He yanked the door open, shoving Emily inside first. Mr. Grayson followed, and Noah barely made it inside before slamming the door shut. The pounding started immediately. Fists, or whatever was left of them, slammed against the door, rattling it in its frame. Trapped. Noah pressed his back against the shelves, his breathing ragged. Emily was shaking. What do we do? Mr. Grayson was pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. We wait, he whispered. Then we find another way out. Noah swallowed, his throat dry. Because one thing was clear. Nowhere was safe. The janitor's closet smelled like dust, sweat, and something metallic, blood, probably. Noah tried to steady his breathing as the pounding on the door grew more intense. The infected outside weren't giving up. Emily crouched beside him, her hands clamped over her mouth, trying to stifle her sobs. Mr. Grayson stood by the door, gripping a rusted mop handle like it was a sword. This door won't hold forever, Noah whispered. Mr. Grayson nodded. We need another way out. Noah scanned the cramped room. Shelves lined the walls, stuffed with old cleaning supplies, buckets, and boxes. His gaze landed on the ceiling, an air vent. It was small, but maybe. The vent, he whispered, pointing. Mr. Grayson followed his gaze. It's a tight squeeze, but it might be our only shot. A sudden crack splintered through the air, the sound of the doorframe beginning to give way. The infected outside weren't just hitting the door anymore, they were slamming into it, throwing their entire weight against the wood. No time to hesitate. Noah scrambled onto one of the shelves, ignoring the creaking protest beneath his weight. He reached up, pushing against the vent cover. It wouldn't budge. Help me. Emily sprang to her feet, climbing up beside him. Together, they shoved at the vent until the rusty screws gave way with a screech. The cover clattered to the floor. The pounding at the door turned to frenzied shrieks. They know. Emily gasped. Mr. Grayson didn't waste time. Emily, you go first. She hesitated, then nodded, hoisting herself into the vent. She wriggled through, her breathing sharp and panicked. It's tight, but I can move, she called back. Noah climbed in next. The metal was freezing against his skin, and the dust stung his nose. He had to crawl forward, barely able to maneuver. Then Mr. Grayson shoved himself inside. The moment he did, the door finally gave way. The infected poured in, their guttural snarls filling the closet. Noah looked back just in time to see one of them, someone who used to be a teacher, leap at the vent opening, clawing at Mr. Grayson's legs. No! Emily screamed. Mr. Grayson kicked hard, his boots slamming into the infected woman's face. Her nose caved in, but she didn't stop. More hands reached up, grabbing at him, pulling. Noah reached back, grabbing his teacher's wrist. Come on! Grayson's eyes met his. And in that second, Noah knew. He wasn't going to make it. With a final, desperate push, Mr. Grayson shoved Noah forward, out of reach. Then he let go. No! Noah shouted, his voice breaking. But it was too late. The infected yanked him down, and his screams were drowned in a chorus of snarls. Emily sobbed, but she kept crawling. Noah, we have to move. Noah's body shook, but he forced himself forward. The vents twisted and turned, leading them away from the janitor's closet. Every breath felt like it could shatter him. Mr. Grayson was gone. But if they stopped now, they'd be next. They pushed forward, crawling through the suffocating metal tunnel. Finally, they reached another vent cover. Emily kicked at it, and the rusted screws gave way. The vent dropped into a hallway, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. They tumbled out, landing hard. Noah groaned, his palms scraping against the tile. The hallway was eerily silent. Blood streaked the walls, and a few motionless bodies lay scattered along the floor. Emily helped him up. Where now? Noah swallowed hard. We have to get out of the school. They moved cautiously, stepping over bodies, listening for any sign of movement. Then, a noise. A soft shuffle, just around the corner. Noah froze. Emily gripped his arm. Is it one of them? A figure stumbled into view. But it wasn't a zombie. It was a girl, her school uniform torn, her dark hair matted with sweat. She clutched a metal chair leg like a weapon, her eyes wild with terror. When she saw them, she gasped. "You're alive?" Noah nodded, his heart still pounding. "So are you." The girl exhaled shakily. "I thought I was the only one left." Emily stepped forward. "What's your name?" "Lena." The girl swallowed, her grip tightening on the chair leg. "I've been hiding in the locker room, but they're everywhere." Noah glanced around. "We're trying to get out. Do you know the fastest way?" Lena hesitated. Then, she pointed. "The emergency exit near the cafeteria." But, she glanced over her shoulder. "It's bad." "How bad?" Emily asked. Lena's eyes darkened. "Bad." A chilling moan echoed down the hall. All three of them turned. At the far end of the hallway, a shadowed figure stood beneath the flickering lights. Then another appeared. Then another. Then they started running. Noah's pulse spiked. "Run!" They sprinted down the hall, their footsteps pounding against the tile. The cafeteria doors loomed ahead. Lena shoved them open, and they stumbled inside. Tables were overturned. Trays of rotten food were spilled across the floor. And the emergency exit was just across the room. But so were the zombies. Dozens of them. They turned at the sound of the doors slamming open, their lifeless eyes locking onto the fresh prey that had just entered. For a split second, nobody moved. Then, the infected charged. Lena screamed. Noah grabbed a chair and hurled it, knocking one of the zombies back. Emily yanked open the emergency exit door. It was locked. Noah's stomach dropped. Trapped. Emily's breath hitched. "We're dead." Noah clenched his fists. "No. Not yet." The infected rushed toward them, their snarls echoing in the cafeteria. Noah grabbed Emily's wrist and yanked her back just as a zombie lunged, slamming into the door she had tried to open. The force of the impact rattled the frame, but the door didn't budge. "It's locked." Emily gasped. Lena swung her chair leg like a baseball bat, smashing it into the head of a zombie that got too close. The creature staggered but didn't stop. "We can't fight all of them," Lena shouted. Noah's mind raced. If they couldn't get through the emergency exit, then... the kitchen! He pointed to the stainless steel double doors leading into the cafeteria kitchen. "Go!" They sprinted across the room, weaving between overturned tables and trays of spoiled food. The infected chased after them, their movements erratic but fast. Too fast. Emily reached the kitchen doors first and shoved them open. They tumbled inside, the heavy doors swinging shut behind them. Lena gasped for breath. "Lock it!" Noah searched frantically, spotting a metal latch at the top of the door. He shoved it into place just as the first zombie slammed into the door from the other side. The metal shook but held, for now. The kitchen was a mess. Blood pooled near the sinks, knives lay scattered across the counters, and something was burning in an oven, filling the air with the acrid stench of smoke and charred meat. Lena wiped sweat from her forehead. "We need another way out." Noah's eyes darted around. Then he spotted it. There! A service door on the far side of the kitchen, marked loading bay. Emily didn't hesitate. She ran toward it and tried the handle. It turned. "It's open!" Noah and Lena rushed after her, bursting into the loading bay. It was a small area lined with metal shelves and a massive rolling garage door leading outside. For the first time since the nightmare began, Noah saw the sky. Gray clouds hung low, and in the distance, the city burned. Smoke curled into the sky from multiple fires, and distant sirens wailed. But the sight wasn't comforting. Because the streets were filled with the dead. Lena cursed under her breath. "This whole damn city is gone." Noah's stomach twisted. Cars were abandoned, bodies lay motionless on sidewalks, and the infected roamed in clusters. Some stood completely still, as if waiting. Others moved with jerky, unnatural motions, searching for something. Searching for them. Emily took a shaky step back. We'll never make it through that. The cafeteria doors rattled violently. The zombies inside hadn't given up. Lena's breathing hitched. We don't have a choice. Noah's heart pounded. If we run, we might. A loud crash cut him off. The cafeteria doors burst open. The infected poured through, their eyes locking onto the fresh prey standing in the loading bay. Emily screamed. Lena spun around. Move! Noah barely had time to react before Lena grabbed his arm and yanked him forward. They sprinted out onto the loading dock, the cold air hitting their faces. Below them, a narrow alley ran between the school and a nearby parking lot. A chain-link fence stood at the end of the alley. Lena pointed. We climbed that and we're out. The infected swarmed behind them, barreling onto the loading dock. Some fell off the edge, landing hard on the pavement below. Others kept coming. Noah didn't look back. He leapt off the dock, landing hard on his feet. Emily followed, stumbling but recovering. Lena landed beside them, already sprinting. The fence was just ahead. Then a new sound cut through the chaos. A gunshot. Noah flinched, expecting pain, but it wasn't aimed at them. A bullet ripped through the skull of an infected just feet away. More shots followed, dropping zombies left and right. Noah whipped his head around. A man stood at the far end of the parking lot, dressed in tattered clothes and gripping a rifle. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his expression was grim but focused. Move, the man shouted. This way. Noah hesitated. Who was this guy? Could they trust him? Emily grabbed his arm. Noah, come on. The fence was still an option, but the gunfire was drawing more attention. Zombies from the street were turning, lurching toward the parking lot. The stranger waved them forward. I can get you out of here. Lena made the decision for them. Screw it, let's go. She bolted toward the man. Noah and Emily followed, adrenaline surging through their veins. The infected swarmed behind them, climbing over the fence, spilling into the parking lot. The man fired another shot, hitting one in the head, but there were too many. Car, he barked, pointing. Noah skidded to a stop next to an old pickup truck. The man yanked the door open and shoved Emily inside first. Zombies were closing in. Lena jumped in next. Noah was about to follow when a cold, rotting hand grabbed his ankle. He cried out, twisting violently. A zombie, a woman with half her face missing, had latched onto him, her blackened fingers digging into his leg. Noah kicked hard, but she wouldn't let go. The man didn't hesitate. He lifted the rifle and brought the butt of it down onto the zombie's skull. Bone cracked, and the creature collapsed. Noah scrambled into the truck. The man jumped in last, slamming the door shut. Zombies swarmed the vehicle, clawing at the windows. The man turned the key. The engine roared to life. He slammed the gas. The truck lurched forward, mowing down the infected in its path. Noah sucked in a breath as the city blurred past. They were alive. But for how long? The truck barreled through the streets, its tires screeching against the pavement as the man swerved past wrecked cars and clusters of zombies. The infected threw themselves at the vehicle, their bodies thudding against the doors, smearing the windows with blood. Noah sat in the back seat, gripping the torn leather, his heart hammering in his chest. Emily was beside him, breathing hard, while Lena sat in the front, still clutching the broken chair leg like it was her last hope. The man drove like he'd done this before. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes sharp as he maneuvered through the hellish cityscape. Who are you? Emily finally managed between gasps. The man didn't look away from the road. Name's Carter. That's it? Lena asked. That's all you need to know. The truck hit a bump, sending them all jolting in their seats. Noah glanced out the window. Buildings were burning. A flipped police car lay in the middle of the road, its siren still weakly wailing. The city was gone. "Where are we going?" Noah asked. Carter exhaled sharply. "Out of the city. You kids won't last long here." Noah exchanged a look with Emily. "And you will?" Carter didn't answer. Lena sat up. "Are you alone?" Carter's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Not by choice." Silence settled in. Noah didn't need to ask any more questions. Carter had lost people. Just like them. The truck roared down an empty street, past a gas station with shattered windows. Something moved inside the store, a shadow shifting in the broken glass. Then Noah saw them. People. A small group, 3, maybe 4, huddled in the gas station, waving frantically. Carter cursed under his breath. "They're alive." Emily gasped. "We have to stop." "We don't have to do anything," Carter muttered. Lena's eyes widened. "We can't just leave them." Carter let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah? And what happens when we stop, huh? What if they've been bitten? What if they turn in the truck? What if we take them and suddenly we don't have enough food or space?" Emily's face twisted in horror. "You can't just..." A deafening crash cut her off. Something slammed into the truck, hard. The world tilted. Noah barely had time to react before the truck flipped, the metal screeching as it rolled. His body was thrown sideways, then upside down. Glass shattered, his head slammed into the roof, and for a moment, the world blurred into chaos. Then, silence. Noah's ears rang. His vision spun. For a few seconds, he couldn't move. Couldn't think. Then, groaning. Someone was alive. Noah blinked hard, his vision clearing. The truck had landed on its side, its windshield cracked, its front caved in. Lena was already moving, her hand pressing against a bleeding gash on her forehead. Emily groaned beside him, dazed but alive. Carter was slumped forward against the wheel, breathing but unconscious. Noah's stomach twisted. Then he heard it. The sound of shuffling. The infected were coming. Lena kicked at the cracked windshield. "We have to get out of here, now." Noah forced his body to move. His limbs screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. Emily was trying to shake Carter awake. "Come on. We have to move." Carter groaned but didn't open his eyes. Lena cursed. "Screw it." She kicked again, and the windshield snapped, the glass falling in jagged pieces. Noah crawled forward, hoisting himself out of the wreckage. The street was a disaster, zombies everywhere, drawn by the noise. And worse? The gas station survivors were gone. Noah's blood ran cold. Had they run? Or had something gotten to them first? Emily pulled Carter free just as the infected reached the truck. Noah grabbed Carter's arm, slinging it over his shoulder. The man groaned, but his legs moved. Lena pointed. "There. That alley." They ran. The infected chased, their guttural shrieks tearing through the air. Noah's breath burned in his throat. Carter was heavy, but he didn't stop moving. They turned into the alley, sprinting past overflowing dumpsters and crumbling brick walls. Then, another figure. A man, standing at the far end of the alley, holding a gun. Noah skidded to a stop. The man aimed the gun at them. "Don't move." Lena's chest heaved. "We're not infected." The man's finger twitched on the trigger. "Prove it." Noah raised his hands. "Please, just let us pass." Behind them, the infected were coming. The man hesitated, just for a moment. Then he lowered the gun. "This way," he muttered. He turned and ran through a door, holding it open. Noah didn't think. Didn't question. They ran inside, the door slamming shut behind them. The world outside roared with the sounds of the undead. Inside? Silence. They had found shelter. But for how long? Noah's heart pounded in his chest as the heavy metal door slammed shut behind them, muffling the horrific sounds of the infected outside. The stranger locked the door with a thick metal bar before turning to face them. "Who the hell are you people?" His voice was sharp, suspicious. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, with a gaunt face and sharp eyes that darted between them like he expected them to attack. He wore a tattered jacket, a pistol holstered at his hip, and a blood-stained crowbar in his grip. Lena, still catching her breath, raised her hands. "We're not infected." The man's gaze flickered to Carter, who was still half-slumped against Noah, his face pale and dazed from the crash. "He doesn't look too good." Emily stepped forward, her hands trembling. He hit his head. "He just needs rest." The man grunted. "If he turns, I'll put him down myself." Noah tensed, instinctively shifting in front of Carter. "We wouldn't bring him in if we thought he was bitten." The stranger gave him a long, unreadable look, then sighed. "Come on." He led them through a dimly lit hallway lined with exposed pipes and cracked tile walls. The building had once been a laundromat. Rows of ancient, rusting washing machines sat against the far wall, their doors hanging open like gaping mouths. Lena narrowed her eyes. "You live here?" The man shrugged. "Better than out there." Noah wasn't sure. The place was stiflingly quiet, the kind of quiet that made his skin crawl. He could hear his own breath, his own heartbeat. It felt wrong. Emily knelt beside Carter, checking the gash on his forehead. He groaned but didn't wake. "Do you have any medical supplies?" The man snorted. "You think this is a hospital?" Emily shot him a glare. "I think if we don't stop the bleeding, he'll die." A long pause. Then the man sighed and walked toward a metal locker in the corner. He yanked it open, rummaged through it, and tossed Emily a small first aid kit. "That's all I got." She caught it, mumbling a quiet thanks before going to work. Noah sat on the cold tile floor, trying to catch his breath. Now that they were out of immediate danger, exhaustion was creeping in. His muscles ached, his lungs burned. He felt like he could sleep for days. Lena sat beside him, resting her head against the wall. The stranger leaned against the counter, watching them. "So," he finally said, "what's your plan?" Noah blinked. "Plan?" The man scoffed. "Yeah. What's your brilliant plan to survive all this?" Noah hesitated. He hadn't thought that far ahead. The only goal had been to get away. Emily spoke without looking up from bandaging Carter's wound. "We were trying to leave the city." The man let out a bitter laugh. "Good luck with that. Every road's blocked, every bridge is crawling with the infected." Lena frowned. "You tried?" He nodded. "A couple weeks ago. Didn't end well." Noah swallowed hard. That meant they were trapped. The man sighed. "Name's Ray, by the way. Since I figure we're stuck together for now." Lena gave him a wary look. "Why are you alone?" Ray's expression darkened. "Because trusting the wrong people gets you killed." Silence stretched between them. Then, a noise. A faint thud from outside. Noah stiffened. Another thud. Then scraping. Something was moving against the outside wall. Ray's face hardened. He grabbed his crowbar and moved toward the door. Noah got to his feet, his heart racing. "What is it?" Ray held up a hand for silence. Then, a voice. Faint, barely audible. "Please, help." Emily's eyes widened. "Someone's out there." Lena tensed. It could be a trap. Ray's jaw tightened. "It is a trap." Noah's stomach twisted. "How do you know?" Ray didn't take his eyes off the door. "Because I've seen it before." Another weak knock. "Please." Emily looked at Ray, horrified. "You're just going to leave them?" Ray's expression was unreadable. "That's not a person anymore." Noah's blood ran cold. And then, the whispering stopped. The silence was somehow worse. Ray didn't move. He just stood there, grip tightening around his crowbar. Then, a sudden, violent crash. Something slammed into the door, hard enough to shake the frame. Noah jumped back, heart hammering. Ray cursed. "They know we're here." Lena grabbed her chair leg. "How many?" Ray moved to the door's peephole and peered out. His entire body went rigid. "Too many." Another slam. A horrific, guttural screech ripped through the air. Noah's stomach twisted. The things outside weren't begging anymore. They were hunting. Ray turned, voice sharp. "We need to move. Now." Emily stared in horror. "Where?" Ray pointed toward the back. "Basement. It's secure." Another crash. The door's hinges groaned. Noah grabbed Carter, pulling him up. "Let's go." Lena was already moving, dragging Emily with her. Ray led the way, shoving open a metal door at the back of the laundromat. A dark staircase yawned before them, descending into shadows. Noah hesitated for half a second, then another slam against the door snapped him into motion. They rushed inside. Ray yanked the door shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. And then, above them, the door burst open. The dead were inside. And there was nowhere left to run. The door above exploded open with a deafening crash. Noah flinched as the sound of snapping wood and screeching metal filled the stairwell. Heavy, wet footsteps pounded against the tile floor above, followed by a chorus of guttural growls. The dead were inside. Ray cursed under his breath and slammed the basement door shut. "Move!" The stairwell was narrow, steep, and pitch black. Noah clung to Carter's half-conscious form as they stumbled downward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Lena and Emily were just ahead, their figures barely visible in the dim emergency light flickering at the bottom. Ray was last, shoving something against the basement door, a heavy metal bar that slid into place with a harsh clang. Noah barely had time to process before the infected reached the top of the stairs. The door shuddered violently. A monstrous howl echoed through the stairwell. They slammed against the metal barrier again and again, the impact shaking the entire doorframe. Noah could hear bones snapping, bodies piling against the door as the undead clawed and threw themselves at it. Lena exhaled sharply. "That's not gonna hold." Ray turned and hurried toward the far end of the basement. "Then we don't wait around for it to fail." Noah glanced around, eyes adjusting to the dimness. The basement was large but cluttered, filled with old washing machine parts, shelves stacked with detergent bottles, and broken chairs. There were no windows, only one other door at the back. Emily was kneeling beside Carter, checking his pulse. "We need to stop moving him so much." His head. Ray cut her off. "He'll be worse off if we're cornered in here." He pointed at the back door. "That leads to a sub-basement. An old maintenance tunnel. We can lose them down there." Lena frowned. "Why didn't we go there first?" Ray gave her a dry look. "Because it's not exactly a safe option." The door upstairs rattled violently. Noah's stomach twisted. "Define not safe." Ray sighed. "It's unstable. Flooded in some areas. And the air down there," he hesitated. "It's bad." Lena narrowed her eyes. "Bad how?" Ray hesitated just a little too long. Emily's voice was tight. "Do we have another choice?" The basement door groaned, metal beginning to bend. Ray gritted his teeth. "Guess not." He grabbed a wrench off the shelf and moved to the back door. With a few sharp twists, the rusted lock snapped, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. A wave of damp, sour air hit them instantly. The smell of mold, sewage, and something rotting. Noah swallowed hard. "Oh. That's what he meant." Lena coughed. "That's disgusting." Ray motioned for them to move. "It gets worse. Hurry." Emily helped Noah drag Carter through the doorway. Lena followed, her face scrunched in disgust. Ray was last, pulling the door shut just as the basement door above finally gave in. The screech of metal bending apart. The sickening sound of bodies crashing down the stairwell. Then, a frenzy of movement. The infected had poured into the basement. Noah barely had time to breathe before Ray was yanking the tunnel door closed behind them. It latched shut just as something slammed into it from the other side. The walls shook. The door rattled violently, but it held. Ray exhaled. That won't last forever. We move now. Noah forced himself to ignore the horrifying sounds behind them and turned to face the tunnel ahead. It was long. Cramped. The walls were damp, covered in peeling paint and thick black mold. The air was stagnant, thick with decay. A low, echoing noise drifted from deeper inside. Noah's throat tightened. There's something down here. Ray's jaw clenched. Yeah. I know. Emily's eyes widened. You didn't mention that. Ray didn't answer. Noah felt cold. Ray. Ray finally turned to face them. His face was grim. This tunnel isn't abandoned. Silence. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. What's down here? A distant sound. A strange, wet gurgling noise, barely audible. Then, a whisper. Not human. Not quite. It came from somewhere deep in the tunnel. Ray's voice was tight. Keep your lights low. Keep quiet. And don't stop moving. Noah's breath hitched. He tightened his grip on Carter, forcing his feet forward as they moved into the dark, the whispering growing louder. Somewhere in the depths of the tunnel, something was waiting. Something hungry. Something worse than the infected. And they had just stepped into its territory. The air in the tunnel was thick and damp, heavy with the scent of rot. Every breath Noah took made his stomach churn. Their footsteps echoed softly as they moved, but the whispering sounds ahead didn't stop. If anything, they multiplied, growing more layered, more unnatural. Something was mimicking speech. Emily's grip tightened on Carter's arm as she whispered, "That's not human." Ray didn't look back. I told you. This tunnel isn't abandoned. Lena, walking just behind him, clenched her jaw. Yeah, but you didn't say what's down here. Ray didn't answer. Noah swallowed hard, forcing himself to keep walking. The tunnel was cramped, barely wide enough for them to move in a single file. The mold-covered pipes running along the ceiling dripped with water, and every now and then, something skittered in the darkness beyond their flashlights. Emily let out a shaky breath. How much further? Ray exhaled through his nose. Few more minutes. A sound shifted behind them. A wet, dragging noise. Noah snapped his head back, heart hammering. The door they had come through was still shut, but something was moving just out of sight. His grip on Carter tightened. I think something followed us. Lena's flashlight flickered as she turned. The shadows in the tunnel seemed to breathe. And then, a whisper. Faint. Almost human. Help, me. Emily stiffened. Oh, God. The voice was wrong. Stretched. Like someone choking on water. Noah's pulse spiked. He turned to Ray. Tell me that was just an echo. Ray froze. His hand hovered near his pistol. Keep moving, he muttered. Noah clenched his jaw. He didn't need to be told twice. They pressed on, moving faster, their footsteps splashing through the thin layer of murky water covering the tunnel floor. The whispering followed. Closer. Please, don't leave me. Lena gritted her teeth. What the hell is it? Ray's voice was grim. Something that learned to mimic. Noah's blood ran cold. The whispering intensified, spreading through the tunnel, bouncing off the walls like a chorus of dying voices. Emily covered her ears. I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Carter stirred weakly in Noah's arms. His lips parted, his voice hoarse. "Mom?" Noah's breath caught. That wasn't Carter. The whispering repeated in Carter's exact voice. "Mom?" Emily gasped. Oh my God. Noah felt a rush of ice-cold dread. The thing in the tunnel wasn't just mimicking, it was learning. Ray turned sharply. "Move. Now." They ran. Water splashed violently beneath their feet as they sprinted forward. The tunnel stretched ahead, impossibly long, the dim emergency lights flickering. Then, a shape moved in the shadows. A lanky, twisted figure crouched just beyond their flashlight beams. Its skin was bloated and translucent, as if it had been soaked in water for weeks. Patches of black mold clung to its limbs. Its jaw hung too wide, a grotesque parody of a human mouth. And then, it spoke. Noah's own voice came back at him. "Run, run, run." A chill shot through his spine. The thing lunged. Ray fired. The shot echoed through the tunnel as the bullet ripped into the creature's chest, but instead of collapsing, it shrieked and convulsed. More shapes emerged from the shadows. Not just one. Dozens. Noah's breath caught. The tunnel was infested. Ray grabbed Noah's arm and yanked him forward. "Go! Go! Go!" They ran. The creatures screeched behind them, their deformed limbs flailing as they crawled along the walls and ceiling like insects. Lena screamed as one dropped down behind her. She swung her metal pipe, smashing it across the thing's swollen face. It staggered, making a sound like gurgling water. Ray fired again, blasting a second one off the ceiling. But they kept coming. The end of the tunnel loomed ahead, a rusted metal door. Ray reached it first and ripped it open. Inside, Emily and Lena shoved through, Noah dragging Carter behind them. Ray was right behind them. Until something grabbed his leg. Ray roared, twisting to kick the thing off, but it had a vice grip on his ankle, its bloated fingers digging into his skin. Noah reacted without thinking. He lunged, swinging his crowbar down hard. Crack. The thing's skull split open, oozing black sludge. It released Ray with a sickening gurgle. Ray stumbled forward, grabbing Noah's collar as they both fell inside. Lena slammed the metal door shut behind them. Bam! Something slammed into it a second later. The creature shrieked, clawing at the door, pounding against it. But it held. The group collapsed onto the damp floor, gasping for breath. Noah's hands were shaking. His pulse was still racing. Ray sat up, wiping sweat from his face. "We're not staying here." Lena panted. "Where the hell are we?" Noah looked around. The space was larger than the tunnel, but worse. Rows of body bags lined the walls. Some torn open. The stench of rot was unbearable. Emily gagged. "This is a morgue." A low creak echoed through the room. Noah's stomach twisted. Some of the body bags were moving. And then, one unzipped from the inside. A rotting face peeked out. And it smiled. The rotting face inside the body bag grinned, its lips peeling back over blackened gums. A wheezing, wet sound escaped its throat, not quite a breath, not quite a growl. Then, it moved. The corpse lurched upward, its skin splitting as it pushed itself free from the body bag. Noah's heart slammed against his ribs. Lena screamed. Emily stumbled back, nearly tripping over Carter's limp body. "What the hell is that?" Ray was already on his feet, gun raised. Not waiting to find out. The thing in the body bag let out a choked gurgle, its movements unnatural, like a puppet with its strings cut. Then, in a voice that was wrongly familiar, it spoke. "Noah." Noah's blood ran cold. It had used his name. Ray fired. The gunshot ripped through the corpse's head, splattering thick, black sludge across the morgue wall. It collapsed, twitching, but the others began to move. One by one, the body bags stirred. Some unzipped from the inside. Others bulged, like something was pushing against the fabric, clawing to get out. The room was coming alive. Emily grabbed Noah's wrist. "We have to get out of here, now." Ray spun toward the far wall. There! A heavy, rusted maintenance door sat at the back of the morgue. Lena yanked on it, but it didn't budge. It stuck. Ray cursed, slamming his shoulder against the metal. Noah turned back toward the rising dead. The first corpse, the one Ray had shot, twitched violently. Its headless body jerked, spasming. Then it crawled forward. Noah's breath hitched. "They don't die like the others." Emily's hands shook. "You have got to be kidding me." A second corpse pulled itself free from a body bag, its face missing entirely. It let out a low, whispering moan. Then, it rushed forward. Noah barely had time to react. Something yanked him back as the creature's clawed hands swiped through the air where he had just stood. Ray shoved him behind him, raised his pistol, and fired twice. Bang! Bang! The bullets tore through its chest, but it didn't stop moving. Noah's stomach turned. "They're not like the infected," Emily breathed. "They're worse." The rusted door groaned. Lena had her entire weight against it, gritting her teeth. "Almost, got it." Another corpse dropped from the ceiling. This one was faster. Its arms lashed out, fingers curling like claws. Emily shoved Carter away, shielding him with her own body. Ray fired again, blasting the thing in the shoulder. It barely flinched. Noah's mind raced. "We can't fight them." Lena let out a cry of victory. "Doors open." Ray grabbed Carter, slinging the barely conscious man over his shoulder. "Move." The group shoved through the door as the corpses lunged. Lena yanked it shut behind them, locking it just as the first body slammed against it. Bang! 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 The dead threw themselves against the door. The metal groaned. Ray didn't wait. "Keep running." The new corridor was tighter, lined with rusted pipes and dripping with condensation. The stench of mold and rot was nearly suffocating. The ground rumbled. Noah realized why a second too late. The wall behind them exploded. The creatures had broken through. A wave of blackened bodies spilled into the tunnel, moving with inhuman speed. Emily screamed. Ray shoved Carter into Noah's arms. "Get him out." Noah didn't argue. He threw Carter over his shoulder and ran. The corridor twisted sharply, opening into a broken staircase. Sunlight. Noah's pulse spiked. "We're almost out." Ray turned and fired one last time, slowing the creatures as they rounded the bend. Lena and Emily scrambled up the stairs. Noah followed, his muscles burning as he carried Carter. His legs were giving out. Ray was last. The creatures were right behind him. The light from outside blinded Noah for a second as he burst into the open. The city's ruined skyline stretched before them. Lena grabbed Carter, helping Noah pull him to safety. Emily turned back. "Ray! Come on!" Ray was halfway up the stairs when a rotting hand shot out and grabbed his ankle. He stumbled. Noah lunged, grabbing his arm. "I got you." Ray's eyes locked onto his. "Go." Noah refused to let go. The creatures swarmed him. Ray yanked something from his belt. A grenade. Noah's stomach dropped. "No." Ray shoved him back with all his strength. Noah stumbled out the doorway, just as Ray pulled the pin. The last thing Noah saw was Ray's grim smile. Then, boom! The explosion ripped through the stairwell. Noah hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Dust and debris rained down as the tunnel collapsed in on itself. When the smoke cleared, Ray was gone. Noah's chest heaved. His arms trembled. Lena was crying. Emily turned away, shoulders shaking. Noah forced himself to breathe. The city stretched before them, burning, broken, and crawling with the dead. Ray had bought them one last chance. But nowhere was safe. Not the school. Not the hospital. Not the streets. Noah clenched his fists. But they were still alive. And they weren't giving up. Not yet. End of Part 8.